In the center of the Grey Wind tribe's open clearing, Nadira knelt, her wrists bound by coarse rope, blood dripping onto the red sand. She was so tall that the rope stretched to its limit, almost ready to snap a towering figure. 7 feet tall. Her body carved with muscle like stone, yet her eyes were filled with the fear of someone far too familiar with pain. 3 seasoned warriors approached, heavy wooden clubs in hand. One of them struck her back. Thud! Nadira only clenched her teeth, her posture unshaken. Her silence made them even angrier. The Grey Wind chieftain stepped forward, his gaze as cold as dying embers. You are a bad omen. Too big. Too strong. No man wants a female like you, he shouted for the entire tribe to hear. Keeping you here will only bring us misfortune. A woman threw a tattered bundle into Nadira's face, just a few scraps of cloth and a piece of dried meat as hard as stone. Go. The tribe cannot feed something like you. Nadira stood up, towering above them all, but no one saw the single tear sliding down her cheek. She did not fight back. She did not beg. She only stared at those who once called themselves her family with hollow eyes, as if her soul had long since slipped away. As she stepped beyond the village's border, frost and snow clung to her enormous bare feet. No one called out. No one said goodbye. Only the cold beat of the ceremonial drum echoed behind her like a solemn decree. You do not belong here anymore. That night, Nadira slept in an abandoned stable, clutching the last few coins she had left, the only remnants of a warrior cast out by the world. 2 days after being cast out, Nadira trudged along the dirt road leading into the town of Pine Creek. The wind lashed her face, and frost clung to her broad shoulders. Each step tore at the wounds on her back, but she kept her posture straight, a habit ingrained in her as an Apache warrior. No matter how deeply she had been rejected, she stood outside a small general store, her hands trembling as she pulled out the last 3 coins she had, barely enough. Begged from the farm she had passed through. Just a bit of cornmeal and a piece of dried meat would keep her going for a few more days. A sudden gust of wind swept through. Whoosh! The coins were ripped from her fingers, tumbling across the dusty street like the last pieces of hope fleeing her grasp. Nadira lunged after them, but her long legs and massive frame made her clumsy in the narrow street. She dropped to her knees, trying to grab 1 coin, but her fingers shook too much from hunger. Then, another hand reached it first. When Nadira looked up, standing before her was a tall, solid man, with tousled dark brown hair stirred by the wind. Jonas Hale, a long-haul freighter, calm, faced with sharp eyes, silently placed each coin back into her hand. His voice was deep, warm, and free of pity. No wind today seems willing to let a coin stay in your hand. Nadira stared at him, her brown eyes filled with suspicion. In a place like this, a towering Apache woman like her usually drew only fear or contempt. But Jonas did not flinch. He looked at the bruises on her wrists, the tear at her shoulder, her threadbare clothes. You're shaking, he said softly, not judging, just making a simple observation, like a man more used to watching the sky than watching people. She scrambled to her feet, instinctively pulling herself inward, like she always did when people stared. I'm fine. I'll be on my way. Jonas shook his head. I've got a room nearby, clean bed, lock on the door. You could rest there a few nights. Nadira stepped back, her voice edged with a warrior's caution. Why would you do that? You don't know who I am. Jonas replied without blinking. I know enough. You need shelter. And I've got it. Amid the howling wind sweeping through the small street, his words felt like a lifeline reaching out to someone sinking beneath frozen depths. Nadira looked around, some curious eyes, a few hateful glares. She gripped the coins tighter, her breath heavy. Never in her life had someone offered her shelter without conditions or contempt. Finally, Nadira gave a faint nod, a trembling nod from someone who had not been allowed to trust in a very long time. Jonas tilted his head slightly. Come on. Snow's about to fall, and for the first time in years, Nadira followed someone not because she was driven out, but because she was invited. The room Jonas spoke of sat apart from the town, beyond a grove of snow-covered cottonwood trees. His wooden cabin was simple yet sturdy, with the faint scent of pine and wood smoke lingering in the cold air. When Nadira stepped inside, her head nearly touched the ceiling beams, But Jonas simply smiled, showing no fear like so many others had. "Get some rest," he said. "I'll make some soup." Nadira gave a small nod. The clean mattress unsettled her. She had never had a bed of her own. When Jonas returned with a bowl of hot soup, she was still sitting upright, back straight, as if waiting for interrogation. Jonas set the bowl in front of her. "Go ahead. No one's going to take it from you." Just a few words, but they brought a single tear to Nadira's eye, one she quickly wiped away. The next day, Jonas went to work while Nadira stayed behind and swept the yard, chopped wood, and repaired the roof of the stable. When he returned, he found her standing on the rooftop, her long legs balancing with ease, muscular arms lifting a heavy plank as if it were a branch. Jonas looked up and chuckled softly. "You're doing more than I ever do," Nadira answered quietly, eyes still on her task. "I don't want to be idle. I'm afraid I'll be sent away." Jonas rested his hands on his hips and looked at her, firm but warm. "I don't send people away just for trying to survive." That made Nadira pause for a few seconds, as if unsure where to store those words inside her heart. That evening, they ate at the same table. Nadira sat at the very edge of the wooden bench, afraid it might break under her weight. Jonas noticed and said, "That bench is solid. You can sit easy." Nadira let out a faint breath and, for the first time, sat down fully. Jonas glanced at the fading bruises along her arm. "What did they do to you?" Nadira was silent for a long moment, then replied, her voice steady, sharp like ground steel. "They said I was a bad sign. That my body brought misfortune to the tribe." Jonas leaned on the table with his elbow, looking directly at her. "I see only one bad thing." Nadira looked up. "It's bad for them to have lost someone like you." Those words made her turn away, but her broad shoulders trembled slightly. A more honest response than any smile could offer. A few days later, while Nadira was walking past the saloon to buy salt, a group of drunk men started laughing, whistling, and calling her Apache freak. Just then, Jonas appeared, still holding his horse's lead rope, eyes darkening. "Shut your mouths. No one here speaks filth about her." No one dared argue. Jonas did not raise his voice, but his tone was sharp as a freshly honed axe. Nadira stood behind him, and for the first time in her life, she felt it. Someone was standing up for her. That night, Pine Creek lay under the steady rhythm of rain, tapping against the wooden roof, like the slow, cold beat of a lonely heart. Jonas stoked the fire in the stove, the golden glow casting warmth across the walls, but Nadira sat at the edge of the room, knees pulled tightly to her chest, as if trying to shrink her towering frame down to half its size. Even the large blanket could not fully cover her broad shoulders, or the scars that crisscrossed her skin. Jonas walked over and added more wood to the fire, then asked gently, "Why are you sitting so far away?" "It's been cold these past 2 nights." Nadira did not look at him. Her voice was quiet. "I don't want to bother you. Don't want to take up space." Jonas frowned slightly and came to sit beside her. Nadira immediately shifted away, creating a small distance between them. That space hit Jonas like a blow to the chest. "Nadira," he said softly, "why do you keep pulling away from me?" Silence. Only the rain and wind outside answered. It took a long moment before she finally spoke, her voice worn and quiet, like stone worn down by water. "I've been sent away before. For being too big, too different. It happens everywhere. I'm just a burden. If I get too close, people get tired and push me out." Jonas turned to her, watching her closely. The firelight lit up her sad brown eyes. Beneath that sculpted, stone-strong body was a heart so abandoned, it had curled in on itself. He spoke gently. "If I wanted you gone, I would have said so. The very first day." Nadira stayed silent. Jonas tilted his head slightly, trying to catch her gaze. "You live like you're always waiting for someone to say, 'Get out.' But this is my home. And here," he placed his hand on the back of hers. Her hand was so large it could have covered half his chest. Nadira flinched slightly, but she did not pull away. "No one says that to you. Not here. Not ever." Nadira blinked quickly, as if holding something back. She tried to smile, but the corners of her lips trembled. "You don't understand. The kinder people are to me, the faster they leave." Jonas shook his head gently. I don't abandon people just for existing, and I am not afraid of you." For the first time, Nadira looked him straight in the eyes. The fire reflected in hers, deep and aching, and Jonas felt the urge to pull her close and protect her from every wound she had ever carried. He added, slowly and with certainty, "I choose who stays in my home. And I choose you." Nadira gripped the blanket tighter, her broad shoulders trembling, not from the cold, but because, for the first time in her life, someone had said words to her that she had never dared to dream of hearing. "I truly appreciate you being here. If this story brings back memories of dusty red afternoons, of hoofbeats echoing through your chest, consider subscribing to my channel, so that every day we can sit together once more, and I'll tell you another tale from the West." In the days after the long rain, Pine Creek lay beneath a soft layer of mist. Every morning, Jonas rose early to haul freight, and Nadira helped him load sacks of flour, drag wooden crates, and rebuild the stable fence. With her natural strength, she lifted a log that usually took 2 grown men to move, barely breaking a sweat. Jonas stood nearby, hands on his hips, half laughing. "You've got this place running twice as fast." Nadira turned away, hiding the blush rising in her chest. Not from being praised for her strength, she was used to that. What shook her heart was the way Jonas spoke to her like a real woman. Not a monster. Not some cursed thing cast out by a tribe. That night, the rain returned. Jonas sat by the fire, repairing an old saddle. Nadira sat a few steps away, stitching a tear in her shirt. The firelight traced the curve of muscle along her arms, casting a warm glow over everything in the room. Jonas looked up just in time to see her wince. She had pulled the thread too hard and pricked her finger. He set the saddle aside and walked over. "Let me see your hand." Nadira shook her head. "It's just a scratch." Jonas did not listen. He gently took her hand so large it nearly swallowed his own and turned it toward the light to see the wound. "You always bear the pain alone." Nadira looked down, her voice smaller than usual. "I'm used to it." Jonas lifted her chin softly with 2 fingers, making her meet his eyes. "You don't have to be used to loneliness here." The words froze her in place. Her chest tightened, her breath deepened, and when Jonas leaned closer, she did not move away. The kiss came slowly, not rushed, but striking like thunder rolling across an empty prairie. Nadira trembled slightly, her powerful hands resting on Jonas's shoulders, afraid to grip too tightly in case she hurt him. Jonas whispered, "You don't have to make yourself smaller for me." Nadira leaned her forehead to his, her voice steady but trembling, the voice of a warrior choosing to trust a man. "Give your life to me. You are a good man." That single line was like flame to dry kindling, burning away every last bit of distance between them. Jonas pulled her into his arms. His body was nearly engulfed by hers, but he was not afraid. He only murmured, "If that's what you want, then it's what I want too." Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside the small cabin, 2 people who had once lived in silence and solitude had finally found the place they belonged, wrapped in each other's arms. Rumors in town spread as fast as wind across the prairie. People whispered about the man living with an Apache girl as tall as a house beam. Some were curious, others mocked, and a few outright sneered. Every time Nadira walked through the streets, eyes followed her, half intrigued, half cruel. One morning, Jonas was hauling freight into the center of Pine Creek. Nadira sat beside him on the wagon seat. Even wrapped in a loose cloak, she stood out like a mountain rising from the plains. She kept her head down, trying to make herself smaller. But at 7 feet tall, about 2.1 meters, there was no hiding from anyone's gaze. When Jonas stopped in front of the saloon to deliver a barrel of beer, a group of drunk men started jeering. One of them, face flushed red with liquor, raised his mug at her and slurred, "Hey, Apache freak, how much meat does it take to feed you? Or does good old Jonas pay you in cows from the whole damn barn?" The others burst into laughter. Nadira clenched her fists. Jonas had just stepped away from the wagon when the laughter hit his ears. He froze, then turned, his expression shifting instantly. His voice was low and sharp as ice. "Shut your mouths." The men laughed louder. Another one sneered. "What's wrong, Jonas? Getting touchy about your big Apache girl?" Jonas walked straight toward them. He did not yell, but every word hit like an axe, splitting timber. "One more word about her, and each of you will answer to me in blood." The saloon fell silent. Jonas rarely got angry, But when he did, his blue eyes darkened like a storm rolling in. No one wanted to test a man who spent his life handling lumber, heavy freight, and wild horses, and most of all, a man who had no fear. He turned back to the wagon and took Nadira's hand, pulling her to stand tall in the middle of the crowded street. His voice rang out, loud enough for every ear in Pine Creek to hear. She is not working to pay off a debt. She is not living off me. Nadira stood frozen, her massive heart pounding in her chest. Jonas gripped her hand tighter. His was small inside hers, but the strength in it was undeniable. She is, Jonas said, each word crystal clear. My wife. The entire street fell into stunned silence. A few women outside the dress shop covered their mouths. The three drunken men staggered back like they had been slapped. Nadira looked at Jonas, unable to believe it. No one had ever stood up for her. No one had ever called her by a title that held any worth. Jonas turned to her, his eyes softening. Come on. We're going to the church. That afternoon, beneath the ringing of bells and the glow of candlelight, Nadira Greywind, a warrior once beaten and banished by her tribe, placed her hand in Jonas Hale's and became his wife, and she had nothing left to prove to the world. That winter came down on Dakota like a fierce white beast. Wind howled through every crack in the walls, driving snow hard against the wooden roof of Jonas and Nadira's cabin. Inside the small room, Jonas fed more logs into the stove, but his eyes never left the bed, where Nadira lay, breathing heavy and deep, like distant war drums echoing through the night. Nadira was in labor. Though she was an Apache warrior with a body built like stone hands that had once lifted heavy timber like toys, now she trembled in waves, not from the cold, but from fear. The kind of fear she had never let herself face before. Fear that the body her tribe called too big would not be able to bring life into the world. Fear of leaving Jonas behind. Fear that the curse they had spoken over her might be real. Jonas sat beside her, gripping her massive hand, which clenched his so tightly that the knuckles of his fingers turned white. Breathe, Nadira. Just like that. Good. She shook her head. Breath quick and panicked. Jonas, if something happens, you have to. He placed his hand gently on her cheek, forcing her to look at him. There's no if. You hear me? You are stronger than they ever said. Stronger than you even know. Another wave of pain tore through her, and Nadira doubled over, teeth clenched, sweat pouring down her temples, mixing with tears she had no time to wipe away. Jonas whispered, his voice low and firm like steel tempered in fire. You are not alone. I am right here. Always. And then through the bitter wind outside, a sound rose. A first cry. Weak, trembling, but clear as the first light of spring. Nadira gasped for air, her body spent, but her eyes flew wide as Jonas placed a small, warm bundle into her arms. A baby girl, tiny, but strong, dark-skinned, with black eyes and a long, lean frame, just like her mother. Nadira pulled the baby to her chest. Her large hand nearly covered the baby's back completely, and then she sobbed loud, raw, like dry earth cracking open after a long, unforgiving drought. Jonas. I didn't think I could. Jonas knelt beside the bed, resting his forehead against hers and their daughters. You did it. You can do anything. You always could. Nadira looked down at the little life, searching for warmth in her arms, a life she never believed she deserved. Her name is Asha. It means new hope in Apache. Jonas smiled and kissed her hand. It's a beautiful name, just like her mother. Outside, the snowstorm still roared, but inside the small cabin, a new family had just been born, strong, bound together, and untouchable by anything the world could throw their way. Spring thawed its way through Dakota slowly, like the breath of a great beast waking from a long slumber. Snow melted into quiet streams, running along the eaves of Jonas's cabin. The little wooden house no longer felt cold as it had all winter. Now it was filled with new sounds. The cry of a baby, Jonas's laughter, and Nadira's soft humming in the ancient Apache tongue. Asha grew faster than anyone expected. At just 2 months old, her limbs had already lengthened, her wide black eyes filled with curiosity, a beauty born of both wilderness and warmth. To outsiders, Nadira holding her daughter looked like a giant cradling a tiny doll. But to Jonas, it was the most beautiful sight he had ever known. He lifted Asha gently to give Nadira a moment's rest and swayed her in his arms. "She's hungry again," he smiled. "She's strong today, almost as strong as you." Nadira laughed, a rare sound, deep and resonant like Apache drums echoing through the valley. "Let's hope she doesn't grow as big as me. I doubt this town could handle two of us." Jonas stepped closer, wrapped an arm around her waist, and said in that calm, steady voice of his, "If there were two of you, this place would be twice as safe." Nadira blushed and turned away, but Jonas had already seen it, the flicker of pride in her eyes. A pride no lifetime of rejection could take from her. At first, the people of Pine Creek looked at Nadira with caution. Some were still afraid. Some were just curious. But in time, they grew used to the sight of the towering Apache woman hauling crates on her shoulder, standing at the general store, bartering goods, or cradling her daughter in hands the size of wooden shovels. One day, the dressmaker's wife paused, staring at Nadira for a long moment before saying, "You're strong, but when I see you holding that baby, I don't see a warrior. I see a mother." Nadira lowered her head, unsure of how to answer. Jonas stood beside her and gave her hand a quiet squeeze. That evening, as they walked back through the grove of snow, white cottonwoods, Asha slept soundly in the sling against Nadira's chest. Jonas placed his hand gently on Nadira's back and said, "Do you remember the day you told me you didn't belong anywhere?" Nadira said nothing. The wind stirred the cotton blossoms like drifting clouds. "You belong where you are loved." His voice was steady, just as it had always been when he spoke to her. "And you belong home with me." With Asha. Nadira looked down at her sleeping daughter. She no longer saw a warrior cast out by her tribe. No longer saw a cursed omen. She no longer saw loneliness. She saw family. She saw a home. She saw a future no one could take from her. And for the first time in her life, Nadira whispered, voice trembling not from fear, but from joy, "At last, I am where I belong." Dear friends, love does not choose the strong or the weak. It is not measured by size or blood. It finds its way to two people who once believed they were unworthy, and binds them together with the simplest of things. A look free of judgment. A hand offered before the other can fall. Love is when we find a home in someone's heart, even after the world has shut every door. And for Nadira and Jonas, love became their quiet salvation, steady, unshakable, and stronger than any storm the prairie could ever bring. It has been a joy to share this story with you, wherever you are in the world. I hope you are safe, at peace, and deeply happy. I love you, my dear audience of Wild West storytelling. Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments below. Type the number 1 if this story moved you, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable tales from the Wild West.